welcome to the Bare Naked podcast. I am your host, Dr. Simmons. I am a psychologist, humanitarian, and entrepreneur. If you're new to our show, the Bare Naked podcast is about truth and authenticity. It is about creating an atmosphere where we can have courageous conversations without judgment. Our goal is to cultivate healing, understanding, and transformation. In short, our show is all about tackling taboo topics that we don't want to talk about, but we really need to talk about. And it is about getting our healing through those discussions. So thank you so much for being with us today. In today's episode, we are talking about coping with grief and loss. This is a topic that's especially important at this time because we're in the holiday season, and this is the time where people really feel the loss of those individuals that are no longer here with them. And it can be a particularly difficult time. So to join me in this discussion today, I have a wonderful guest that I know you all will love. And she is none other than our very own Mrs. Dolly Sarmu.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure. Hello, everybody. My name is Dolly Sarmu. I'm a banker by profession, and I'm a wife. And I'm just excited to be here and discussing this topic, which I know it could be a very hard one for most of us. And I'm just here to give my side of the story of grieving and how we can all cope with it, or how we are coping with it if you have experienced it in life. So I'm excited to be here. Really.
I'm so excited to have you. We're happy to have you here as well. Um, we're talking about grief, and we're talking about grief and loss in particular. And when it comes to the issue of grief, it's something that most, if not all of us, have felt. We've all gone through it, but sometimes it can be hard to define. So I'll give a very simple definition of grief, and then I'll ask you, why do you think it's so hard for people to talk about it? So when we think about grief, we're talking about a deep sorrow or pain or emotional suffering that we experience whenever we lose someone or something that is near and dear to us that we absolutely value, right? So grief is
Uh,
simply deep emotional experience or suffering that we have in response to losing a loved one or something. I think it's important for us to keep in mind that grief is really a natural response to loss. Unfortunately, because we don't talk about it as much, whenever people are grieving, sometimes we think something's wrong with us because the grief is felt so deeply, right? So from your perspective, why do you think it's difficult for people to talk about grief, to talk about their grief experiences?
so I mean, with grieving is just sometimes it's a bit of an inner thing,
Mm.
and is like a private thing. Sometimes people, it's hard to accept or come to term with, okay, I just lost somebody who maybe I was really close to, or someone who meant the world to me, or just someone who that I live with or I see on a daily basis. So to come to terms, sometimes talking about that is like the acceptance part for me. Like,
Yeah.
okay, if I'm talking about this, it's real. If I'm talking
Yeah.
about this, it happened.
Mm.
So, I'm gonna just keep it inside. I'm gonna just hold on to my thoughts and just, I don't want to talk about it. Sometimes it's just too painful to talk about, to let out your feelings and say, hey, I'm experiencing this inside. I'm feeling this inside. And, maybe keeping it inside makes you feel like, okay, I got this, or I don't think it's happening. So, the more I don't talk about it,
Yeah.
it's not that real for me. So,
Hmm.
so most people will feel that way and decide not to talk about it, or talk on the subject. Just the fact that, yeah, I don't think, I want to go into that. I don't want to live that reality for me right now. So I think most people might not want to talk about it because it's the acceptance part. Is
Yeah.
the okay, talking about it is real,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is hard. I don't want it to feel. I don't want to feel the way that I'm supposed to feel because keeping it inside and not talking about it, is like, okay, this is still not real.
Hmm.
It's just going to be here for now. Let's just put it on the side. So,
Yeah.
and we'll deal with it later. And I don't want to talk about it. So it's just like, I don't want to accept it.
Yeah.
Basically, in my
Yeah.
understanding, like some people talk about it besides it being painful, bringing up, the person you just lost and thinking about, all of the happy memories and things that you guys share. You're not ready to, face that reality, for
Yeah.
most people. So not talking about it is like, yeah, that's the mechanism that I would use. I'm just gonna keep it that way. To cope with this, I would not talk about it. Just keep it inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such an excellent, those are excellent points, and so what I heard was that sometimes people don't talk about it because the pain is just that deep. It's so
Hmm.
hard, and in order to not necessarily have to deal with the reality of that pain, it feels easier to just not say anything, and and just kind of like keep it within. And the other piece that you said that I heard is
Hmm.
that talking about it makes it real. It's no longer a thing that may have happened. It is a thing that definitely happened. It
Right.
makes you have to face the reality that, wow, this is truly the case. That is final. It's not a possibility anymore. It's real that this thing actually happened.
Oh yeah, definitely,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely. Hmm.
As you were talking about the whole idea of getting to acceptance, what I thought about was like the stages of grief, right? So there are
Hmm.
most people are familiar with the 5 stages of grief. It's been extended to 7, but for the sake of our podcast, I'll talk about the ones that's more people are familiar with, which is the 5 stages of grief. And one of the very first stages that's mentioned is denial, where you're in such a
Right.
state of shock and you don't want to believe that is true. It feels like
It's,
things are happening outside of you that this can't really be real. So have you experienced that? Like, is that relatable? Does that sound familiar? That first stage, which is denial, that this isn't happening.
oh yeah, definitely. And I will probably touch on that later on in our conversation. So,
Yeah.
denial is people. I read about that, and you hear about it, and you'd be like, but why? Why would someone want to deny the fact that something is happening?
Yeah.
Denial is so real because I've experienced it. Um, and recently. So if
Yeah.
someone passed away from you, someone you care about, the first thing you be like, oh no. In my head, and most people that I talk to, oh yeah, I just put it in my head like this person traveled. I don't
Yeah.
want to accept that they're gone. I don't
Yeah.
want to accept that they're no longer with us. The
Hmm.
first thing I'm going to do is just deny the fact that they just, passed away.
Hmm.
So I would just say, oh, yeah, they went somewhere. And you
Yeah.
just put yourself in that denial stage, and it helps you cope within the moments of that, that passing of your loved ones. So if
Hmm.
someone just you just put yourself in that category, like, oh yeah, it's I'm not accepting this, it's not true, so the
Yeah.
first thing is you're going to be in denial.
Yeah.
And that happened to me.
Yeah.
So it's like really, it's such a shocker. And you
Hmm.
go like, I don't think this is real. This can't happen to us or my family, or it
Yeah.
can't just be in our family or in our midst right now. This is not true. It's not real. And then you
Yeah.
just get into that denial stage, until after a while, maybe you then get to the funeral, maybe after all of that, and then you start to come to another realization
Yeah.
about, okay, this is kind of happening. Then
Hmm.
again, you're still in that denial stage. It
Yeah.
depends on individual, like
Hmm.
how long you want to stay in that stage. Sometimes,
Yeah.
like for me, right after the funeral, I started to get some type of acceptance
Mhm.
that this just happened, you know?
Mhm.
Although
Mhm.
it already happened, I was there when it happened, but I
Yeah.
couldn't accept it that it was
Yeah.
happening. So it's just, denial stage is real. It's
It's
very
real.
real. Hmm.
Yeah. And I think it makes sense to kind of just go right into your personal experience with grief, at this moment, right? Like, have you experienced grief? And if so, what did it feel like for you? And we'll squeeze in time to kind of talk about the stages of grief, but I'm more interested at this time, in like, have you experienced that, and what was it like? What is it like for you to be grieving?
So for me right now, I was just put it out there. So recently I lost my mother-in-law, and for our family, it came as a real shocker because it's like the very day that she passed, I spoke with her.
Mm.
So, like it was on a Friday and it was like
Yeah.
8 o'clock. And then I got this call and she calls me a certain way that I know, she's in a good mood, she's happy, there's no sign of anything. And
Yeah.
you're just happy, like, hey, come over, come get XYZ. And I said, being lazy, sometimes we have the tendency, sometimes you come from work, you don't want to
Yeah.
get up and drive again. And, so I was like, oh, I'll come tomorrow.
Yeah.
And tomorrow did not come
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
it was like on a Friday, on a Saturday, and boom, she's gone.
That's it.
So there was
Yeah.
no, let me say a few last words, or, this person is sick, you've been to the hospital a few times
Mhm.
and you guys can sit down maybe and talk a little bit, what the final thoughts were, but
Right.
nothing. It's just happened, boom, and she was
Mhm.
gone. So it was just like, oh my God, this just happened and so quickly. So for
Yeah.
me, right now, like experiencing that, and we're
Yeah.
still going through it. Like the first thing was, oh my God. Like you think sometimes people will last like forever. We all know we're not gonna last forever. We're not here to last forever. But you build that in your mind, especially when you see someone every day, you talk to them every day, you have that connection with them. And my mother-in-law and I, we had our own special bond. We were like,
Yeah.
I was more of a daughter to her than even a daughter-in-law. Like you would not even know if I didn't tell you, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So for me, it has been very, very hard.
Mhm.
It has been like trying times. It's like comes in waves. It's been
Mhm.
just 4 months.
Yeah.
So I'm still mourning. I don't know if you
Yeah.
notice I wear black, and I wear
Mhm.
black since her passing, and we've been mourning her since then. But it's a hard one. It's
Yeah.
very, very right now in this moment.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
it's still fresh, and my heart still breaks for you and for the family. You said it well. I came to realize that you and your mother-in-law were more mother daughter than anything else. You live so close to each other.
Oh
that's
yeah,
that's your girl. That's your ride or die. You talk
I right.
every day. That. And she's also the glue, right? Kind of like the matriarch of the family, the one that holds everybody together. And when
Together.
you lose that, just the pain and how disorienting that can be, just it disrupts everything that you've come to know as being normal for your family, for the way that everybody functions.
It does. Just 2 days ago was her birthday, and
Yeah.
it was a terrible reality for all of us. My
Yeah.
husband mourning his mom. I'm here, his dad. So it was a trying moment.
Yeah.
We went to the grave, just to see, just to stand there and just say, hey, happy birthday, happy heavenly birthday, like we would say,
Yeah.
on the side of the world. And it was like, wow, so she's not here, because usually, the pepper soup will be on the fire, we'll cook
Yes.
on the beers in the fridge, and it's cold.
Yes.
And maybe if it's a work day, she's calling me, you coming from work, you coming over here, I have XYZ, what are you bringing? In fact, what you cooking, what you bringing over, and we're having plans. And,
Yeah.
it's our first Thanksgiving without her. And she had planned this whole family get together. It was supposed to be happening this Thursday. Everybody's supposed to be coming from out of state, and we who here locally will, make some plans, and we're all just doing a family thing. And now the whole thing just went away.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
scary.
still cannot believe. And to be honest, coping is like, how do I live without this person that I talk to most days when I'm even on my way from work?
Yeah.
She calls me all the time, and it's like sometimes I don't still believe it.
Yeah.
I listen
Yeah.
to old voice messages.
Mhm.
That's a way of coping. Like
Yeah.
looking at videos, we have several videos dancing, singing
Yeah.
and backyard like celebrations and all of those moments. And I just look back and I said, oh my God, you know, those videos and the voice messages are my way of coping. Are my
Yeah.
way of saying like, she's still with me. I can
Yeah.
hear her voice. I can watch the video, and
Mhm.
it just keeps me in a subtle mode because without those, I don't know how I'll cope. I'll cry every day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So kind of,
mhm.
remembering her and remembering, her voice and the things that she would want you all to do, and just being able to reflect back on videos and
Yeah.
pictures, it kind of keeps the person alive. It keeps their memories alive in your heart as you're grieving, you know.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely.
there's so much there, right? I think when you talked about it being her birthday, I was thinking about how sometimes even in our grief, even when you're beyond, because your grief is still fresh, it's 4 months, right? But it
Mm-hmm.
may be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It's important to remember that there may be trigger moments for us, right? Like birthdays. Oh man, this is mom's birthday at this time. Or Thanksgiving. Wow, Thanksgiving was her time,
Oh
Christmas, just these markers that kind of remind you of that person. And sometimes you may think you're it's hard to even or even fathom now, but you may think like, oh, I've been good all year, I'm doing well, and then out of nowhere there's just one thought or one event that's happening that brings her back to your recollection, and before you know it, you're kind of overwhelmed again with those feelings of grieving, of
definitely.
loss, and all of that. Yeah.
Mhm. Oh yeah. Yeah, I even have friends who lost their parents or one of their parents like earlier on in their lives, and they're grown adults, and they still can get over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They still are in, some moments
Mhm.
they will cry. Some
Yeah.
moments they think about, and it's like, oh my God, this happened 10, 20 years ago,
Mhm.
and it just comes fresh. So
Still
I
comes.
would say that there is no way of getting over a loved one, but you
Yeah.
learn to live with the fact that they're gone.
Mhm.
That's it for me. You will
Yeah.
not get over it. You won't say, "Oh yes, it's been 10 years, we're done." No, it's
Mhm.
been 10 years of living without this person,
True.
but you have to live to you would just have to live with the fact that they're gone, but you will never get over it
Yeah.
because it's a human being. It's someone that you know. It's someone that you love. It's someone that like had an impact in your life,
Mhm.
one way or the other. So there's no way you just can toss that memories aside and say, I'm done. I'm done grieving. I'm done, thinking about this person and it's over with. No, you live that
Yeah.
moment the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And for us, that's the reality because we have not had this in our family, and experiencing this for the first time. It's like, oh my God, you know, I feel for, all those people, all those funerals we went to, we didn't even know the depth,
Yeah.
of how these people were coping or what they were going through until you experienced it. And then you really come to a different realization
Mhm. Mhm.
and say,
Yeah.
wow, this is a
Yeah.
whole different world, like a whole world of grieving and loss. And, it's just a whole different world that
Yeah.
if you had not experienced that, you would not know really
Mhm.
truly what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were talking about, you were talking about friends who have lost their maybe mom, dad, just someone that they love 20
Mhm.
plus years ago or 10 years ago, and they still feel it,
They
I
still
can
feel.
relate. Yeah, I can relate to that, because I lost my stepdad in 2016,
Oh,
and he was basically my favorite person. Definitely, I've been blessed with amazing step parents, and he was my guy. He was my guy, and I turned to him for everything.
mm,
And he died of cancer, right? And the difficult thing is that's a whole long story because he had cancer, then he recovered, and so you had hope, and then all of a sudden it came back with a vengeance, and you're thinking, okay, because he recovered the first time, he'll
yeah,
recover again. And
right.
and you were talking about listening to your mother-in-law's messages. I definitely, like, I kept his last text to me, and I still listen to his voice messages. It's been a long time. And even true confession, when we were doing friends, we just had our Friendsgiving, and it was such a great celebratory time. And then there was a song that came on, and it was a Celine song. And I'm sitting there, I'm typing because I was working on a sermon and everything.
Right.
And I just started bawling my eyes out. And I was like, oh my, it didn't click. It didn't click until like seconds later, and I realized, wow, I was crying because the first person to introduce me to every Celine Dion song was my stepdad,
What?
and like it just, yeah, it brought back memories, and it made me miss him so much. But like it was fond memories, but I didn't see it coming because it's been so long, and all
Yeah.
it took was a song, and it just like waterworks, out of nowhere. Like, wow, I really, really miss my dad. Like that's so
Oh,
20
so
20
sorry.
2016, but here we are, right? And I
Mm,
I just say that to say, like, sometimes it doesn't, just to reinforce what you said, that it doesn't necessarily matter when it happened, that
mm,
we're grieving is an individual thing, and we all grieve at different times. And there are times where we're fine, but then we're triggered by something like a
right.
song, or like a smell, like, wow, that was my, your mother-in-law favorite smell, or her favorite food. Like those triggers will come up, and
Oh,
it will just bring everything back to you. Yeah,
constantly,
yeah,
constantly. So
yeah,
crazy how that works. Constantly,
yeah.
you will definitely get those moments like that happened to you. It happens to
Mhm.
us all the time. Like
Mhm.
I'll be driving and a certain song will come on and I'll say, oh, because sometimes we're there, I'll drive and we'll go out to the store together and I'll put his oldies and I say,
Yeah.
I'm gonna crank the music up really high. She said, go
Mhm.
for it. She wasn't afraid to
Mhm.
have fun. She was
Oh,
a lively person. So I would just put the
yeah.
music up loud and then we'll just be jamming. And then when I hear this music and I'm like, oh, good God,
My girl.
she's not
Yeah,
here or,
yeah. And I
so
don't know if this happened to you, but I know sometimes I would, like, because just out of habit, I would wanna pick up the phone and call. Like, and then I'm just like, "Oh, I can't call that person," I can't call him. But just because you're used to, like, a certain routine, so you
mhm.
wanna automatically do your routine, and you have to remember, like, "No, she's not there," or
It
"No, he's
happens
not
all the time to me.
there."
In the
Yeah.
beginning, I left from work and I picked my phone up and then I said, "Oh, let me call Jay." And I said, "Oh, oh, 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 oh." It's like, and I just
Mhm.
cry right away.
Yeah.
You just have the moment and then you realize that I
Mhm.
won't talk to this person anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
It's such a hard thing to do, to cope with. It's
yeah,
such a hard thing to live with.
yeah,
But as Christians, a lot of times we depend on prayers,
yeah,
family praying, we depend on, the family togetherness
yeah.
and just God overall helping us
Mhm.
through the process because you can't do it alone. I don't know about other people, but
Mhm.
my family and I, we just been dependent on God because He's the only person that is able to, mend this broken heart because it is not easy.
It's not
It is
easy.
not easy.
And I'm so happy that you talked about coping, because you've mentioned depending on your faith, right? Depending on
Hmm.
each other, because nobody should grieve alone. It's too painful to grieve alone, you
Oh,
know?
it really is.
Um, And then you also mentioned reflecting on, maybe hearing her voice and pictures and all of that. So you've talked about some really good, helpful coping skills that's been helping you. Sometimes when we're grieving, um, in people's attempt to make us feel better, they may say certain things or do certain things that they think is helpful and it's not necessarily helpful. So, are there, even if it hasn't happened to you in particular, but are there maybe certain words or certain phrases or certain things that people may do during your grieving time that may not necessarily be helpful?
So, I mean, definitely sometimes people try to help
Yeah,
and say they want to say the right thing, but sometimes there's no right thing to say,
yeah,
and leaving things be
hmm,
sometimes is the best thing you can do. Like, for
yes,
example, like I've had some people come in and say, this has happened.
hmm,
She's lived her life.
hmm,
She's gone, and you guys just need to move on. Like,
hmm,
I don't want to hear that. I don't
yeah,
want to hear that. Not right now. I
yeah,
know I will move on. It's time.
hmm,
But just tell me I'm keeping you in my prayers. That is the best thing you can do. Don't
yeah,
tell anyone grieving at that moment, oh yeah, this person is gone. And especially when you're at that stage of not acceptance, like unacceptance, you
hmm,
know, you're not there yet. And then
hmm,
someone's telling you, oh, just move on. You know, it's okay. She's gone. She lived her life. And no, 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 no. I don't want to move on. I'm not ready to move on. I don't want to hear it. Just a simple sorry for your loss, or my condolences, and I'm keeping you in my prayers. Because with time, of course, like they say, time heals everyone wound. So yes, it will heal the wound, but not right now. Right now I'm hurting, and in order to heal, I need to feel that hurt. Because
yeah,
if you just rip it out of me and just want me to move on, it may
mhm,
affect me longer down the road, because
yeah,
I didn't take the time to grieve. I didn't take the time to feel this pain. And now I just, had to be strong and like, oh, no, no, you don't have to be strong. You don't have to be strong at that moment.
that's right.
You
That's
have to
right.
pick yourself up, but you don't have to be strong at the moment. You have to give yourself time to
Yeah,
let this simmer in, to let this, to feel this loss of this person that you care about, that care about you, that wasn't even ready to leave this world, but they had no choice. And you know that because you talk with this person, you know what they were feeling the last moments, or when you guys talked, the last time you spoke, or whatever time you guys spoke, or you know what you guys talked about. So it wasn't something that they was ready for.
yeah,
So to just keep that in mind and know that this person, oh my God, they were not ready for this. And it happened because they had no choice. I'm not
yeah,
ready to move on. So
mhm,
just say sorry for your loss. Or I'm
yeah,
keeping you in my purse. Simple.
100%.
But don't
Yeah,
tell nobody, oh yeah, it happened, just move on. Like, no, 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 no,
mhm,
no, no.
yeah, yeah.
You're not
Oh
ready.
my God. You hit
Mhm.
so many good things. One thing I often say in grief is like, um, the best thing you can do when someone is grieving is to just listen. And I
That's
say, listening is so close to loving that you can barely tell them apart. When you truly love somebody and they're grieving, just listen. You don't need words to just plenty of words. Sometimes we feel like we want to give them so much, but it's okay to just listen. It's
that's it.
okay to say what you said, which is, my deepest condolences. It's
Mhm.
okay to just give a hug in that moment because sometimes somebody, they just want to just melt in your arms, and that's okay. You
Right.
know, you don't have to sound intelligent and wise and brilliant and say anything at all. That's perfectly fine. Just your presence sometimes is more than enough.
That's it.
Long long after the funeral, are you still there? Because that's when the reality starts to sink in, and that's
Mhm.
when you're needed the most. Are you there when everything is over, when she's now buried, when we've had the wake, when people are now home? Are you
Mhm.
there then?
That's the part. Are you there?
Yeah,
It's all nice, of course, definitely coming, seeing the family when it's just happened, and
yeah,
having people around. But the main the most time that the family needs people is when that person have been buried, because it's all about the planning and making sure everything goes right, and who's coming, who's not coming, and
Yeah.
who's ordering this flower or whatever, just the whole
Mhm.
planning of the funeral. Like, people around you, it's just like, okay, people are here. But
Mhm.
once that person goes into the ground, it's a whole different story. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like a paper, like you can just drop a pin and
Mm.
just hear it. Like, everything just goes silent, blank. Everybody goes back to where they came from. You know, the house is silent. It's just it's just that feeling of somebody gone that used to be there, and that's when you need that friend to come and visit and say, "Hey, how you doing? You know, I hope you're doing okay. Oh, okay, I brought something for you to eat. Like, I was on my way, I just stopped by." Like, the slow things
Yeah.
after everything is said and done, because that's the moment the real hurting begins. Not when the person passed. It's really after, because now is 100% reality. They're gone. They're under the ground. There's no bringing it back. There's nothing. So definitely, if that's happened to you, or someone who's going through that, visit them after the funeral. Visit them after this person is buried. It is the time they'll need you the most.
Need you the most, 100%. You said a couple of things that made me think about certain myths that people have around grief, right? Like one thing that you said earlier was, oh, they said, oh, it was the person's time, just move on, just move
Mhm.
on, it's okay. And you said it's not necessarily what I want to hear in that moment. Of course, in time I will move on, but I need to
Mhm.
feel all the feels.
Right.
I need to go through the process, because your healing comes through being able to like sit with the emotion of it all, allow it to work its way through your mind and through your body, being okay with crying, being okay with the snotty nose, being okay with the confusion, rather than running away from it.
Mhm.
And so that right there is one myth that people have, is like, just go past it. The quicker you go past it, the better you'll be.
Right.
But that's a myth, and that's not a reality. It can actually, like you rightfully stated, it could cause more harm than good, because in the long run, you didn't really get to process anything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. That's just a myth.
Mhm. Mhm.
Honestly, like,
Mhm. Yeah.
getting past it is just not that simple. It's
Yeah.
it's it's not that simple. Like, you need to take the time.
Mhm. Yeah.
You need to take the time.
Mhm.
Definitely, you need to take the time, because
100%.
if you don't, it's going to end up way worse than
Mhm.
you initially anticipated, because not taking the time is like, oh, just get past it, just move on. No, I don't need to do that. I
Yeah.
need to take my time and
Mhm.
grieve my loss, and come to realization that this happened to me or happened to my family, and I need to grieve and
Mhm.
accept it before I can move on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be even one month, 2 month, 3 months. It takes years.
Mhm.
And of course, nobody wants to be sad all the time, or knowing that, okay, this person may never come back, so I'm just going to stay in this state. No. But you need to give people time. People need time to come to term with whatever happened to them. So
Yeah.
definitely, that is not true at all
Mhm.
about just picking yourself up and just going and just, hey, no, you need the
Yeah.
time. You have
Need
to
the
take the
time.
you have
Yeah.
to.
100%. That time is needed. I think the other thing that you hear a lot of times, that at least I've heard this, is like, Dolly, you just have to be strong, you know? Um, and it's so interesting, because my first thought when people said just be strong, it's like, what does that mean really? Right?
Hmm.
Because like, what is it? Grieving is no time to be strong, or anything like that. Grieving is the time to, you have to allow yourself to cry when you feel like crying, and you
Yeah.
have to allow yourself to scream when you feel like screaming.
Oh
And
yeah.
being emotional doesn't mean you're weak. Crying doesn't mean you're weak. So when people say just be strong, I always wonder what does that mean? Are you trying to say I should ignore it and just keep moving? Are you trying to say I shouldn't cry, which is a natural response to grief? Are you trying to say I should repress my all the emotions that's piled up inside of me? Am I supposed to just
Mhm.
press it down and move on? Because that is detrimental. That's not helping me in any
It
way.
is.
So what does being strong mean anyway, you know?
It's just crazy when people say that, because I think they're trying to be helpful,
Yes,
in that
yes.
situation, and like, oh yeah, I need to say some words of encouragement. I need to be the person who will say this and pull this person out of whatever they're feeling. But no,
Yeah,
it doesn't
yeah.
work that way.
Mhm,
It does not work. It's easy for you to sit on the other side, maybe because you're not close to that person or it's not your
mhm,
family, but
mhm.
it is hard for someone who's going through that. And being
Yeah.
strong, yes, you have to be strong, but you have to also realize that they just had someone taken away from them.
Mhm.
And there's no being strong in that part. It's just like, how do I even become strong to handle this? How do
Yeah,
I even, pick myself up the floor and say, I I have to, I have to get up and move on and know that this person's gone. So
yeah.
being strong is nice and everything, but it's just not reality.
It's
It's
nice
just
in theory.
it's
It's
nice,
nice in theory,
and
but
that's
not in reality,
supposed
in
to say.
practice. Yeah.
I think they're
It's
supposed to say, no. It,
yeah,
you can
yeah.
say that because you think, that's the thing you're supposed to say, but it just doesn't work that way. Give people time to mourn, to grieve, to cry, you know. So
Mhm.
funny thing happened. I asked a friend of mine, and I said to her, because she's a Caucasian, a friend of mine, and I said to her, I said, hey, I've never really been to a funeral where a Caucasian person passed away, and how you guys handle that. And I
Yeah.
said, she said, we just go to the church and they just pay your respect and that. And I said, well, if you come to this funeral and at the
Mhm.
time, we're preparing, I said, have you been to a funeral where, someone from, uh, my race or African descent, passed away. Have you been to an African funeral? And she says, no. And I said, okay. She said, what happens there? I said, well, people let their emotions out.
Mhm.
I see that in movies, where here's someone from the opposite, probably just quiet and just, I said, people will scream their guts
Mhm.
out and you would think something's happening. She said, oh my God, really?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, they will cry. They're not afraid to cry. They will let it
Mhm.
out. And I said,
Yeah.
if that should happen, if I should go to the funeral and just really bawl my eyes out, she said, if you scream like that, we're calling the police.
Yeah. Or if you scream, let you cry, you
She
know?
said, everybody, are you okay? We do need to call the police to
Yeah.
come. And it
That's
was
so
funny. I
funny.
was like,
Yeah.
so you're not allowed to really burst out and cry. You just grieve silently and say how different cultures are. And I
Yep.
said, you should come to this one. You will be very shocked because
Yeah.
there will be a lot of screaming and crying
Yep. Yep.
and
And
laughing too.
and laughing. We scream, we cry, we laugh.
Oh, yeah.
When you were talking, I was thinking about how in our culture we even have people that are mourners. Like you can pay people to come cry. They'll feel the depths. If you want to feel what deep wound feel like, they will express it beyond your own expression. You
You won't
know,
even believe it.
You- it won't be compared. You won't even you when they finish crying for you, you won't even need to cry for yourself.
No,
But like
not
it's
just take it
necessary. Yeah, yeah.
for that.
That's
And
so funny.
oh my God, I say, yeah.
She said, "We will call the cops and see if you're
Repeat
okay." Yeah, yeah. Cultural differences, man. Cultural differences in how
very
we grieve.
different.
Yeah,
And how to process stuff is so crazy. And I just
yeah.
laughed. I said, yeah, this is so
Yep.
different. Mhm. So
That's
I made it.
I'm so glad you brought up that point because um it makes me think of the other another point when it comes to myth about grieving. This whole idea that if you don't cry, that means you're not sorry or that means you're not feeling for the person. But you just gave a really good example of like not only is grief cultural, in terms of like different ways that different cultures
Yeah.
deal with it, but it's also individual. People deal with their grief individually, right? Some of us will cry, we'll roll, we'll want to jump in the, in the grave with our people. Others,
Yeah.
yeah, they sit there and they just kind of like they're processing it all. And just because you
Hmm.
don't see tears, you can't judge them based on their tears. Their tears does not mean a lack of care. That some or they're them not crying doesn't mean they don't care, rather, but
Hmm.
what it does mean is that maybe that's not how they grieve. Maybe they grieve later. Maybe they grieve behind
Right.
closed doors, and maybe they grieve, maybe their grief will be delayed. Sometimes people don't feel grief immediately. They feel it
Right.
6 months later. All of a sudden it hits them, right? Because prior to that, maybe they were in a frozen or a shock state for 6 months before it
Hmm.
finally hit them that this is happening. So, one myth that we have that I want us to dispel is this whole idea that if you really are grieving, you have to cry. And if you don't cry, that means you really don't feel sorry about losing the person, or that you don't care, or that you don't miss the person.
Yeah, that's just a complete myth because
Yeah.
everybody process grief differently. Everybody, you know, just have a different way of grieving. Some people, like for me, I'm a crier. I will cry at the split of a second. Like for
Mm-hmm.
example, when my mother-in-law passed, I went to her freezer to get
Hmm.
something from there, and usually when she was around, we
Yeah.
went together. She would always say,
Uh,
"Let me go with you, and I'll give this to you, I'll give that to you." And I went there by myself. And as soon as I just opened the freezer, I closed it immediately, and I was like, not even myself anymore. I said, "My God, what am I doing here by myself? I'm usually not here by
yeah.
myself. I'm here with her." So I'm a crier. I will cry for every single thing. And you know it's different for other people.
Yeah.
They keep silent. Even with my husband, like he's the person who was just, you wouldn't even, he just stays quiet.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
know that he's hurting.
Yeah.
He's not going to be bawling like me, but
Mhm.
I see it, and I talk about it because I don't want that internal grief. I want you to pull it out, but everybody's not the same. So that's a complete myth. You
Yeah.
Crying does not symbolize anything, that you don't feel sorry because you don't cry. No, no, the worst ones are the ones who don't cry because they process that internally, which is a devastating part of it. I'll say most people will say cry it out so you get
Right.
it out of your system, but
Yeah.
it's different ways people process grief. So don't have to feel bad if you're not crying. Some people cry, like you said, in 6 months. Some people cry in 3 months. Some people
Mhm.
cry maybe within a year. And it just hits them, like a wave, and like, oh my God, this happened even 1 year ago. And why am I crying now? So it's
Yeah.
different. It's really, really different. So crying does not symbolize anything about grief. It's just how you process it for yourself. That's it.
I
Mm-hmm.
really love that. You said it so beautifully, and I appreciate the fact that you recognize the distinction between how you grieve and the way your husband grieves, right? Again, personal. You and I are both the same. We'll cry.
Mm-hmm.
I will cry. I'll cry, right? Even you talk about your mother-in-law. I was welling up a little bit. I'm like, keep it together if you can. But we'll cry, and then other people will kind of
I
just
said
like,
I was talking about.
it's hard.
It is. I was like, I'm not crying today. I will
Hmm.
smile. I know,
Yeah.
viewers are watching and say, what are they talking about grieving and smiling? Yeah,
Hmm.
sometimes you just have to smile through
You
it,
just
and
smile. Yeah.
just, know that it's gonna be okay. Because
Yeah.
if I start to cry here, you guys will I don't know what you guys will do. So I'm just like, okay, I'm not gonna cry. I'm gonna talk about this
Yeah.
because I know
Yeah.
some people are gonna be watching,
Yeah.
and they might take, one or two advice from
Mhm.
from 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 this podcast, or someone who's just lost someone, and
Yeah.
they're looking to see how it's for somebody else who's going through it, or how they're coping with it. So we're smiling, but deep down within my heart is not easy,
The
you know
pain is real.
so it's a real. It is definitely.
Mhm. There's a saying that sometimes you gotta smile, to keep from crying, right? Like, there's sometimes the smile is all you have, and it's okay to smile.
Right.
And on that note, that just reminds me, and then we'll wrap up soon and give some advice to our viewers. But it's sometimes when we're grieving, there are some people who think like, "Oh, I'm grieving, I can't laugh. I'm grieving, I can't smile.
Right.
I'm grieving, I can't do any of these things." But we're not robots. We're humans with complex emotions, right? So
Mhm.
you can be grieving and still find something funny. You can be
Right.
grieving and still, go and eat your favorite gelato or ice cream or whatever. You can be grieving and still
Right.
do those things that it doesn't mean you're in a frozen state of nothingness, but rather that like the grief is a part of all the other experiences that you're having.
Mhm.
I've heard people say to me, "I feel so guilty for having a good day." Because I'm supposed to be grieving, and my response is, listen, it's completely normal to be grieving and still have a good day. And we
Right.
want to even savor those moments because it means that that was a whole day that you had where you didn't have to completely fall apart, where you didn't have to peel yourself off of the bed, where you
Mhm.
allow yourself to just be. That is okay. Like, embrace that moment, and it
Mhm.
doesn't take away from your grieving process at all. In
True.
fact, that very idea of having a good day is a part of your grieving process. And we got
Right.
to incorporate it in it, as opposed to being like, "Oh no, I can't be happy today because I don't want anyone to see me smile. I don't want to even have
Yeah.
myself smile." No, it's a part of your grief. It's a part of your grief. It's a part of your healing journey, and embrace every aspect of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Um, you have to.
Yeah.
It's definitely part of. So, like, laughing, you don't feel
Mhm.
guilty about that, because if we go back to the Bible, like the
Mhm.
Bible would tell you that if someone die, rejoice. If someone is born, cry. It's the
Yeah.
exact opposite.
Yeah.
Cry for the newborn. And weep for the new person born in the war. I don't know how to word that, but I know the Bible said
Mhm.
that. And
Yeah.
and if someone dies, rejoice, have a
Mhm.
feast, have fun. But nobody wants to have a feast and have fun if there's
Yeah.
just lost someone. And
Mhm.
nobody wants to cry if a child is born. Everybody wants to be
Mhm.
happy, and so it's just the exact opposite, because the
Opposite.
Bible knows exactly what it's talking about. So
Yeah.
it's just what it is.
It is. Mhm.
It's
Uh,
just
uh,
what it
100%, 100%. So now I want us to kind of give, there's so much good stuff here, because I mean,
is.
I but we will go on, we'll go on, we'll go on, but I hope so far that people are getting, some things from what we've been saying, right? How you've coped, what's been helpful to you, what's not so helpful. What are some myths that we need to just get rid of, dispel? All of those things are important things to note, and that it's okay that you can be human. To cry is human. To laugh is human. That just because you're grieving, you don't have to distinguish between the two. I'll put this in this camp and I'll put that in
Right.
that. But they can cohabitate in the same person, and that's perfectly fine.
Hmm.
Um, I know we started a little bit talking about the stages of grief. I'll run through it really quickly. We talked about denial being the first stage, right? And
Hmm.
and that's we already discussed what that looked like. It's just this shock that it happened. Is like, this cannot be real.
Right.
It really can't be real. The and some people may stay in that stage for weeks, some people months, some people it might even extend to a year, where it's just,
Hmm.
this can't be real, this can't be real. The second stage is anger, right? Where we're so angry, like, for those of us that are people of faith, Lord, why did this happen? Why did it
Yeah.
happen to her? Why did it
Mm.
happen to him? How come it wasn't, sometimes we even want him, it should have been me. We say things like that, right?
Yeah.
We're angry. We're
Yeah.
angry at God. Sometimes we're angry at the person. Oh,
Mm.
why did you leave us like this? Why did you leave us in this situation? And then sometimes we're even angry at ourselves because
Yeah.
we're like, I should have been there. Why didn't I fight harder? Why didn't I see this coming? Even when it was abrupt, no one saw it coming. Something inside of us feel like we should have done something. So there's this anger at ourselves, at others, at the person, at God,
Hmm.
at our faith. especially if you prayed, if it's one of those where the person was sick and you were
Yeah.
believing God for their healing, and you prayed and you prayed and you cried and you cried and you believed, because people will say things like, just believe, you have to have faith, it will happen. When
Yeah.
you fast, you pray, you have faith that to move mountains, and it
Yeah.
still happens. There
Yes.
is this time where you just, some people may go through some anger at their faith, anger
Mhm.
at their God, anger at the pastor, anger at the bishop, whatever it may be. We're mad, we're angry. So that's like a second phase or stage that we might go through. The other is bargaining. Lord, you know what? If you bring them back, I would not do this again. Or if you
Yeah.
just bring them back, I will do things exactly right. If you bring them back, all the stuff that I promised I would do. We're trying so hard to bargain. Like, come on.
Mhm.
I'll give something if you give me back my loved one. I'll give
Mhm.
something if you give me back the thing that I
Yeah.
lost, right? That's that bargaining stage. And then we get to a place where the fourth stage is then depression. That's
Yes.
when it really hits, man. And that's when somebody have to, if you're married, just be grateful, because you will take turns peeling each other off the bed, forcing
Mhm.
the other person to brush their teeth, to
Yeah.
wash their face. Who's gonna cook for us today? Nobody want to eat.
Mhm.
We can't sleep. That's it's that stage where it really has hit that, man, this person that I have known and loved for all these years is no
Yeah.
longer here with me, right? And we go into a state of depression, a lot of sadness, a lot of crying, a lot of fatigue, a lot of, I don't want to do this. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I can't think
Oh
straight.
yeah.
All of that. That's that depressive stage. And then if God blesses us, we hope to get to a place where we can get to the point of acceptance, which was what you mentioned earlier, right? And acceptance doesn't mean, oh, and I forget about the person. Acceptance simply means that I accept that the loss happened, and that
Right.
I have to put one foot in front of the other, but that their memory lives on, and that they'll always be in my heart. And I can always turn to that voice message, or to that video, or to their favorite food, or to go to that refrigerator and think about them, that freezer, and think about them, right? It's just accepting the reality of it. And that's the stages, right? And I think something that's important to know is that these stages don't happen sequentially. Boom, boom,
Right.
boom, all the, we can rotate through them. Depression can come first, and then denial will come later.
Later.
Anger can come
Mhm.
first, and then it come later. We might land on acceptance, and then the next day we're like, I'm depressed all over again. And
Oh
we
yeah.
go through that cycle until we're finally at a place where we feel a little bit more healed day by day.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
that's just with time.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't happen,
Hmm.
like you said, it's not like a rule thing, like this has to happen first, second, third. No.
Hmm.
It could just be a mix of emotions happening all around the place. Like
Yeah.
just different ones. Like I felt anger. Like,
Hmm.
oh I why? You know,
Hmm.
why did this happen? Like we pray, we ask you, we believe. Even when the doctor told us, "Oh, prepare yourselves," was like, "Nope, we're not going to, because it's not going to happen." In the
Yes.
name of Jesus, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
as believers, we put that right out there. Everything He said, we will combat it with, with prayers, with scriptures, with everything. And that poor man was just trying to give us, his medical
Advice.
advice and
Hmm.
everything, and we were just like combining that with prayers and everything, and at the end of the day it didn't work. um
Hmm.
does that mean that God didn't care, or prayers don't work? No, it's just that it was her time, in a sense, like that was when He wanted her home. And no matter what you said, it doesn't mean you have to listen. That, like
Hmm.
the pastor told me, like not all prayers will ever be answered. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that he didn't hear it, but
Yeah.
it wasn't something that it was aligned with God in the terms that He was going to fulfill for you. So
Yeah.
it's just that part, and it's just
Yeah.
that part of it.
Yeah. My bishop always says it's not about the number of years, it's about, did you fulfill your assignment, on
Mm,
this earth? How many
right.
lives you touched? Did you do what you were called to do? Because, Jesus' time on earth was, like his ministry was 3 years. That was it. It was 3 years of his ministry and he was out of here. He's like, peace has been real,
Wow.
but it's not. And there's so many other people who look at Dr. King, right? Died
Right.
at a much younger than some of us, but like we're still talking about him today, right? It's not about the years that you live, but rather did you fulfill your assignment? Did you impact
Mm.
the lives that you needed to? Did you leave something positive on this earth that people can reflect on and say, you know what? Manje was here. Oh, Kona was here. That's my stepdad's name. Like they left their mark here, and that's what it's all about.
Oh yeah.
We will never have all the answers to everything as to why things happen.
Mm-mm.
But we can rest assured that nothing catches God by surprise. And he wasn't like, oh, I can't believe this happened. And it's like, it's
Right.
just like, it happened. We don't understand it. It hurts so bad. And we just have to get to a place where it's like, okay, I accept that it happened. Now, how do I commemorate this person? How do I live a life that makes them proud, right? How
Right.
do I, as a family, how do you get back together and kind of
Mm.
put one foot in front of the other, one day at a time, one moment at a time, and create this new fulfilling life that still keeps her legacy alive, even in her
Definitely.
physical absence.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So advice time, advice time. What are some advice that you have for people who are grieving, at this time? Because you never know who needs to hear what we're talking about, which lives are being touched. I'm always amazed since I started this podcast how we'll just have these conversations and we think it's nothing, but so many people send messages in my DMs or personal or messages that's it warms my heart to see the way in which it's touching them. And I think what we're talking about, Dola, this whole idea of grief is one that all of us or most of us can relate to, and we can
Mm-hmm.
all take something from it to just try to cope. So, what advice do you have for anyone that's currently grieving that you want to, kind of bestow upon them or leave them with?
So, what I would say is, if you're watching, you're listening, and you just had someone, you know, passed away, or you're grieving, maybe someone passed away years ago or recently, or however long it had been, take your time. I would tell you. Do not feel the need to feel guilty inside that you're hanging on to this memory or this loss for a long time, because this is a person, even if you lost a pet, people still feel a certain way, you know. More talk about a human being, and God knows who was that person to you. So I would tell you, take your time, you know, grieve, take your time to understand what really happened, that all has happened to you or your family, and process it the best that you can. Um, and just, if you're a person of faith, pray. And that really helps, because we just don't want to lean on our own understanding. If you're a person of faith, ask God to give you the strength, because sometimes we feel like we can do so many things by ourselves. But there are certain things, especially when it comes to loss of a loved one, you need that special grace, you need that help. And and that's where I stand. I'm a person of faith. I trust God, and I'm a follower of Jesus. So I speak on that. And I just say prayers have helped us. Families have been there, friends have been there, their prayers have been keeping us. And I would say, keep God close. Take your time. Don't let nobody feel like they need to rush you into moving along. You will move along, and it all gonna deal with time. Once that time comes, you will know it. You will feel it, and you will know that it's time to move on. Listen to whatever voice messages you have of this person, pictures, memories that you guys share together. It will help ease the pain. Sometimes I lay in bed in the morning and I just play a video of us and I just laugh, you know, and I'll be like, and I just move on. I will laugh about that. Before, when I see the video, I'll cry. But I'm at the stage where when I see the video, I now laugh. So it's time. Time will heal any wound. So just take your time. you know. But just while you're doing that, just remember to take care of yourself too, because there's no going back. This person will never come back. It's just how we choose to deal with the loss of this person. So I also take your time and put God first. It will come together. You will feel yourself. You will get past it again.
Yeah. Oh man, I love your advice so much. I mean, there's not much to add. You can just tell you spoke from the heart and you're speaking
Mm-hmm.
from experience,
Oh yeah.
Everything that you said, I don't want to have to repeat it. Everything that you said is 100% on point. Ultimately, I think it's important to acknowledge your pain. It's okay. This hurts and it hurts really bad, and it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. You know, like you rightfully stated, everyone grieve differently. Don't let anyone squeeze you into a time frame. Oh, it's been a year now, move on. No, if you're still grieving, you're still grieving. You know,
Yes.
I think something that's come in handy, and I'm so grateful that you brought this up, is for people of faith, that is their anchor. That's what keeps you up, because you know that there's something on the other side of this life that you have to hold on to, that I'm going to see my loved one out, one day outside of here. And
Right.
that's what we hold on to. That's our faith, that's our true north, that's our anchor, right? And so if you're not a person of faith, turn to family and
Mm-hmm.
friends, and just you need that support to fuel you, because there's nothing worse than trying to grieve by yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's also important to take care of yourself. Self care is critical. Grief can hit such a deep wound that it can make you not want to do anything at all. And if we're not
Oh yeah.
mindful, we can stay in that place and we go further and further and further in. And that's not necessarily what we want to do, right? So self-care, if there were things that you were doing before you lost the person, keep doing those things. Don't get rid of your hobbies. Don't, say, "Oh, I'm not doing this anymore." Oh, if you used to, I don't know, you used to write, "Oh, I'm not writing anymore." If you were horseback riding, I'm not horseback
Right.
riding anymore. The things you used to enjoy, walking,
Continue
I
to do.
keep walking, hiking, keep hiking, running, keep running, music, keep listening to it, just to continue that routine so that you don't completely get out of sort and
Right.
have grief overtake you. Um, and then
Right.
lastly, I would say feel all the feels. If it's
Mm-hmm.
There's a time for everything. If you want to cry, cry. If you feel like laughing because something's funny, laugh. If you
Right.
want to scream, scream. All of those things are important to do, but really, you at when it's all said and done, Dolly, like you rightfully stated, with time, the thing that used to hurt so bad, it's not that it no longer hurts at all, but it's a lot more manageable. With
Yeah.
time, you can savor the moment. With time, you can laugh about things that you were crying about. With
Oh.
time, you're no longer feeling like I'm completely isolated and this stage would never pass. But you get to a place where you say, wow, I can't, this time last year I was
Mm.
in bed for 7 days, but look
Right.
at me today. I'm at work. I went to work. This time last year, I couldn't eat at all, but today I had some kind of hell of a buffet. That
Oh
in
yeah.
time you see your progress, but your loved one's memory stays and it lives on, and I think that's
That's
the
what
most
keeps you
beautiful.
going.
Yeah,
Just hanging on
yeah,
to those memories and just remembering this person
yeah,
and living life and going through life with them in your
yeah,
mind and in your memory. And that is huge. That will bring
yeah,
you so much comfort and so much peace, and just continue to do the things that you guys, if you had Thanksgiving every year as family, continue to do that and just incorporate that person and ask questions at the table, like, oh yeah, what would this person say if we had asked them this, or what this person do, talk about it. And that would ease the pain. Just keep the memory alive. That's it. Just
yeah.
keep the memories alive.
Mhm. 100%. So,
Mhm.
with that being said, I mean, I'm so excited, Dolly. Thank you so much for joining me for this particular episode on grief, coping with grief. Your expertise, your addition was everything. I really loved what you had to add and what you had to say. And I'm sure that the people that are watching, that our audience, will appreciate your wisdom because you had so many gems, so many nuggets of wisdom that people can use. And I know in my heart of hearts that it will bless somebody. I know in my heart of hearts that it will lift somebody's spirit, that it will give someone hope. And what I was hoping for is you brought that and then some. So I want to take this time to thank you so much, not just for your time, but for your availability, all of you, for pouring out on such a difficult topic. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Any last minute
Oh,
thoughts?
definitely. It has been my pleasure being here and, discussing such a hard topic, such a delicate topic. And it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on this amazing podcast. And I hope that definitely that it bless somebody's heart and give somebody the strength and the tool to go on in their grieving process. So it's been a pleasure being here. I'm excited and I hope I'll be back again sometime.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm sure you will. We'll have a panel next time about some interesting topics, but for the
All
purpose
right.
of this one, man, we nailed it. Um, so what if you're watching, of course, as always, we're pleading. Please, if you found this episode to be helpful, please like it, share it, subscribe it. Listen, you can find us on YouTube or anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Please listen there. Give us a nice review and share it with your friends because you really never know who needs exactly what it is that we're discussing here. Until next time, I will leave you as I always do. Be the light that shines in someone else's darkness. Thank you.
Thank you.